All right, Miles, we got to talk about Ole Miss for a little bit. This is one of the stories that's been kind of quietly under the radar because a lot of other things have been happening in the world of sports the last few days. But we want to really circle back to this story. This was first reported by the Associated Press that Alabama defensive coordinator Pete Golding is leaving for the same job at rival Mississippi. Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin announced the hiring on Saturday of Golding, who had been the Crimson Tide's defensive coordinator since 2018. The 38-year-old joins Kiffin, himself a former offensive coordinator under Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa, and remains in the Southeastern Conference Western Division. All right, Miles, I think this is a pretty big move from Ole Miss. Obviously, they need to upgrade their defense. That's been probably the weakest part of their game, honestly. I think quarterback play maybe something else they want a little more out of, but I think defense under Lane Kiffin has been an issue at times. And I think getting Golding, I think he's a good coach, but I think sticking it in the craw of Nick Saban, I think is not a small part of what Kiffin is doing here. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on this move and Ole Miss in general. But before I hand it over to you, Ole Miss fans, we want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. Obviously, the Golding hire is a big move, but we want to know what pickup did Ole Miss make this offseason that you're really excited about going into 2023 and beyond? Let us know in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It really helps us out, really helps us grow the channel. Plus, it means all the Ole Miss and SEC content that we publish, and we publish a lot of it, gets sent right to you whenever we publish it. Make sure you hit subscribe. All right, Miles, but give me the latest. What do you got, and what do you think of this move?
Yeah, Nick, I think it's a pretty great move. Obviously, Lane Kiffin, he wants to upgrade this staff. The Rebels are looking like a strong contender coming in to next season. This reminds me, if they bring it back to the old, days of like that land shark defense, like I remember Robert Nikomdici and some other, top play callers. Obviously, my favorite Ole Miss team is when Bo Wallace was a quarterback down there. Those are some really good times. But I think bringing in Golding for the Rebels is a really, really big move, just because he's played, had Alabama defenses, and they've been a strong defensive team for a while. And I really mean this in the fact of the development of players. There have been a lot of really, really highly touted Alabama defensive players coming out in the last 5 years since 2018. And, in college football, that's kind of what it's all about, recruiting and player development. If you have a good scheme, if you can recruit and develop players well, which Ole Miss has been able to recruit very well lately. Lane Kiffin has the Rebels, in the top of the recruiting classes. And I just think this hire is going to help the development of these strong defensive players because Alabama has sent a number of top tier players to the NFL lately. Don't you agree with that, Nick? Do you think that this development and recruitment aspect from Golding is going to help a lot?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. And I think this is why it's sort of a double-sided move, or I should say a double win for Ole Miss, is that the fact that they are going to get better on defense just because Golding is a coach. Well, I'll call it triple win. I think it's a win-win-win because Golding obviously is a good coach. He knows how to coach defense. He's an upgrade to the defensive coaching staff at Ole Miss, but he's also an SEC West coach. He knows Alabama, knows LSU, frankly, knows Ole Miss, knows Mississippi State, knows all those guys. He's coached in big games as well. So he knows, teams like Georgia and things like that. That kind of experience and familiarity will help Ole Miss in those kinds of matchups as well. And then the recruiting side, because you brought up a great point. Lane Kiffin is a recruiting and transfer machine on the offensive side of the ball, because that's obviously his background. I mean, he the running back transfers, the freshman running backs, all the guys, the receivers, the quarterbacks, offensive line. He's a great job at recruiting both guys out of high school and transfers into Ole Miss on the offensive side of the ball. Not so much on the defensive end, but a guy with Golding's pedigree and background, obviously Alabama's Alabama, right, is going to really help in that arena as well. And frankly, this team needs it, because if you look at where Ole Miss is ranked defensively last year in the SEC, they are right behind A&M and just a little bit above Carolina. And some of the teams ahead of Ole Miss in the defensive rankings, you have in the SEC West specifically, you have Alabama, Mississippi State, LSU, A&M, and then Ole Miss. So the top contenders for that division are better defensively than Ole Miss, and they need to get better in that arena fast, because obviously Lane Kiffin's offense is explosive and dynamic, but it's not enough to win in the SEC. You need a complete package, and bringing in Golding, I think, is one of the parts to getting them there.